Okay. Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, April 16th, 2015, about 1 in the afternoon, and we're in Espoo, Finland at Aalto University, and so this is part of the Computational Intelligence Society IEEE CIS History Committee interview. My name is Donald Wunsch. I'm the Mary K. Finley, Missouri Distinguished Professor of Computer Engineering at Missouri University of Science and Technology, and I chair the IEEE CIS History Committee. And so today I'm here to interview Erkki Oja, and he's now a Professor Emeritus of Computer Science, and he's at Aalto University and still affiliated with the European Union Academy of Sciences.
Well, several institutions, yeah, right.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about the institutions that you're affiliated with.
Okay. Well, I'm a member of this Academia Europea, it's the European Academy, but then I'm doing a lot of evaluation work for European Union, especially for the European Research Council, where, for instance, I'm a member of the panel for computer science for the starting grants, and that's actually what I've been doing the past week.
Oh, good.
Just reading through these evaluations. So that's the kind of job that you never lose, even when you become an emeritus. You just have to do it still.
Yeah, it's very important for the future of the field.
Right.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, so Erkki, tell us a little bit about your formal education and training.
Okay, I've been here at Helsinki University of Technology for a really long time. I started my studies as an undergraduate in 1967, when I finished high school, and then graduated as a Master of Science in '72, and then got my PhD in 1977, and then I've been around in several universities in Finland and abroad.
Oh, okay.
Like Brown, I was postdocing at Brown University, and then I've been 2 years at Tokyo Institute of Technology as a visiting researcher and a visiting professor. Also some shorter terms, for instance, in Paris, at the University of Paris.
Who were your hosts at these institutions?
Okay, at Brown, that was really important. When I postdoc, it was Professor Liam Cooper, who of course is a pioneer and a very well-known name.
Nobel laureate too.
Nobel laureate in physics, yes. And at that time he was getting very interested in neural modeling, and I was lucky to get into his research group.
Oh, great. Well, I think he was lucky too. He certainly had a lot of impact in the field of neural networks after that too.
Sure.
Yeah, and at Tokyo?
It was Professor Ogawa, who was also a mathematician, kind of information mathematics.
Oh, great, wonderful. Well, you've been doing this a long time. What was your first job in science or engineering?
Well, I've been in a university all my life.
So you were a research assistant, basically.
Exactly, yes, exactly.
And did you start out in the lab of Teuvo Kahonen?
Yes. So I was lucky to be invited by Teuvo as his graduate student. That I started that in 1974, and then did my PhD in 1977. And Teuvo was my supervisor. Then the topic was so-called associative memories. That was a hot topic in the 70s.
Well, and when you hear his interview, you'll be pleased to hear that he made it quite clear that he's very proud of you, and he made sure that we knew that you were his first PhD.
Well, that's true. Well, thank you very much. But of course, his influence and his example were quite essential in informing my career.
Well, that's great. It's wonderful when the relationship works so well, and my academic grandfather told me that the first PhD is very important, and I would agree with that. To have a really good student for the first PhD makes a big difference.
I agree, yes.
Yeah. Um, so, what was your first paper published?
Okay, I knew this question will come, and so I checked my my list of publications, and I actually found the paper. It's right here. It's called A Theoretical Study of Serial Correlation of Spike Trains in a Second Order Neuron, and that was published in the International Journal of Neuroscience in 1972.
Oh, great.
So it is co-authored by Dr. Yrjö Jokinen, who was a postdoc at Helsinki University.
Great. So I'll put that where people can see that citation. Focus on that. Okay.
I was lucky to be involved in a research group at the Department of Physiology at Helsinki University, where they studied sensory, basically the cat visual system and sensory neurons, and I made some theoretical modeling, which probably is not very accurate in terms of the physiological truth, but it was very nice to try to fit some mathematical models into that problem.
Well, that's how science works. We iterate.
Yeah. And that's how it works. Yes. And I was an undergraduate student when I did this work. So.
Oh,
that
great!
Before my graduation.
Yeah. So those undergrads working on research projects, try to turn that into a publication. It really makes a big difference.
Actually, that's what I try to do now. So we take every summer quite a few undergraduate students as summer interns into the lab. And if they are talented enough, we really get papers out of them, conference papers at least.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that my undergrads see this interview. I have 4 undergrads in my lab at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. And so this is the same answer to my next question, your first CI-related paper, because this was a CI-related paper. I see you have some other papers there to tell us about, though.
Okay. Well, the second one I just picked up was this kind of the main paper from my postdoc work with Liam Cooper. So in a way we continue this same theme. So the name of this is A Theory for the Acquisition and Loss of Neuron Specificity in Visual Cortex. So trying to understand how, for instance, young kittens, when their eyes open, it's very easy to make experiments in which their visual system develops into a very specific kind of tuning system, like seeing only vertical lines and not horizontal lines at all, just by wearing some goggles with vertical lines. But that can, at a certain critical time, that can be still kind of unlearned, so that the visual system will still turn out to be normal. And we try to model here in this paper how that might be possible.
Biological Cybernetics, that's one of my favorite journals. This is the journal where they publish the reviews too, right?
Yeah, some of them.
Yeah, that's a very entertaining journal to read, because you get to read the reviews and the rebuttals of the reviews, and it's if you haven't read Biological Cybernetics, you need to look in there for some articles. That's great. The theory for the acquisition and loss of neuron specificity in visual cortex. Fascinating.
Yeah, so I would say that, and this is from 1979. So as we all know, this whole field of neural networks was not really born yet at that time. So we called it neural modeling. Mm-hmm. And it was a rather small group of people all over the world who was doing this. It was not so popular. Mm-hmm. because many people wanted to go to artificial intelligence, things like that, and there was always a problem with this kind of works, that however you model, you're never sure whether it has anything to do with the reality.
Yeah, so if you think that you're onto something, it makes sense to stick to that and not chase the fads that everybody else is chasing, right. But to build on something that you're convinced has some promise.
Right. Yeah. And that was the field in the 1970s.
Yeah, and it can take a while for things to to come to fruition, but
Yeah,
when
right.
they do, they really do. And you have some others there too, right?
Okay, this is then after this postdoc year at Brown University, I kind of I still remain very interested in unsupervised learning, especially how an individual neuron who somehow tuned to become some kind of information processing unit. And then I came up with this so-called principal component neuron. So one of my most cited papers is this one that's called Simplify the Neuron Model as a Principal Component Analyzer. That was in the Journal of Mathematical Biology. The year was 1982. So that was just the time when this field of artificial neural networks, by that name, was beginning to kind of be born.
Oh, great.
And then there in this paper, I presented a very simple unsupervised synaptic modification rule by which a neuron, just by taking inputs, will become a principal component analyzer for the stream of inputs. And that rule has become rather well known. So it's maybe one of the major things that I done in my youth.
Well, good.
When I was a young man.
I realize that I'm anticipating some of the subsequent questions, so we'll make sure we hit these. But that's great to see that. So, what persuaded you to study science and engineering?
Oh yeah, right. So you know, for a very young person, like when you're a teenager in high school, it's really the family has quite a lot of, at least in my case, the family had quite a lot of effects on what I did. And actually, my family is full of humanists. So my parents studied humanities, languages, history. My father was a professional history researcher.
Wow.
At the Finnish National Archives. But I had one person in the family, my grandmother, granny, my father's mother, who studied physics actually in the beginning of the 19th century, like 1905, about that time. And she was a very kind of nice person. I liked her very much, and she told me stories. Remember, the early 19th century was the time when, for instance, Albert Einstein was publishing his theory of relativity, I think in 1905. So that must have been an extremely exciting time in physics, and so she wanted to go there because it was exciting. And I decided, is there anything equally exciting right now going on in the world? And I decided to try, and so I started to study physics. But then I found out that physics is not quite as interesting as it could be, and then I turned into the question that of biology. So how does the brain work? And that's why I then went to publish these papers, and I went to Teo's group and then Leon Cooper's group just by that question: how do the neurons work?
Yeah, so you certainly found your way into the center of what during your career and remains a hotbed of excitement, sort of like what the early 20th century was for physics of the Einstein and Bohr and Copenhagen interpretation and all this type of thing. The contributions of that magnitude are happening in our field, and it's spilling over into being motivated by biology, but now being applied in biology as well. So, and that's an answer to one of the other questions about a person influential in your decision, a person or event. Were there any events in particular that were?
No, I really think that's the reason why I went to study physics. But then really Teuvo Kohonen, whom you all know, he invited me as his graduate student and persuaded me that look, physics as such is not so great, but look at these models, Forrester's associative memories, and I was totally overwhelmed. This is something for me, and then I went there.
So you met him through a classroom, but then got invited into his research lab.
Exactly.
Good,
Yes,
good,
yes.
good. You must have been a good student.
Well, pretty.
Yeah, I'm sure you were. Yeah. So this answers my next question: when you got involved in the core technology of neural networks, and kind of about what triggered your jump into it was that invitation. So your first activity, the work with Teo, what could you say a little bit more about that work that you were doing in his group at the time when you got started?
Okay, so of course there were strong ideas about these so-called associative memories at that time, but he needed some young student who would kind of go through the mathematics basically. So I was the mathematician in Teo's group, proving theorems that how do these associative memories work, and how can you perhaps extend them and so on. But basically the core idea was definitely Teo's idea, so I was the mathematician who kind of put it on in some part perhaps on a bit more rigorous basis.
Good.
And then I jumped, after my PhD, I jumped to Brown University as a postdoc to Liam Cooper's group. And after that, I just went on my own. I got an assistant professor position in another Finnish university, and kind of left the group.
Yeah, that's good for a young PhD to have some time to spread his wings, move around the world, establish his reputation. So you're a winner of the IEEE Computational Intelligence Society Pioneer Award, and so one thing that we like to ask our Pioneer Award winners is, what was the major challenge you faced in doing the pioneering research?
Okay, let's say that in the 70s, as I said earlier, we really tried to do some more really serious modeling of the brain, and of course there are some very impressive work going on in that field. But what I felt at that time was that it was a little bit disappointing because it was extremely hard to find really experimentation that would really say that, okay, is this theory right or is it not right? So it was kind of almost impossible to default this or kind of prove that that model is not correct or this model is correct. You can say about plausibility and things like that, but that was not, to me, that was not really convincing. And so I kind of lost my faith in trying to really model the real brain, let's say the existing biological system. And instead then I wanted to turn to this computational side. And as we all know, in neural networks there are two sides. There's the modeling side, and then there's this hope of building intelligent machines somehow. And I kind of quit the first one, and then I moved to the second one, and it turned out to be rather useful. So trying to develop these so-called machine learning computational algorithms for some real engineering problems, and that's where I have been since then.
That's been a common denominator in a lot of these interviews, that dissatisfaction can be your friend. Finding something that you're not pleased with about your chosen field, and that causing you to do something different as a result, often leads to breakthrough opportunities.
Right.
So when you're dissatisfied about something, take heart. That might be the best thing that ever happened.
Exactly, because then you have to think hard.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the really important thing? For example, in my case, this so-called PCA neuron developed into the so-called subspace classifiers in pattern recognition, and later into something called independent component analysis, which is a kind of extension of principal component analysis. Has nothing to do, or may have something to do, of course, with the biology, but I don't have any theories for that. But it's a very nice computational technique for certain engineering problems.
And you have a book here by that title.
Right. It's,
Okay. And all three authors are from this institution, right?
Right, my former students, yes.
Oh, good. Okay, great. When did this book come out?
It came out in 2001, and this technique is something related to the problem called blind source separation, meaning that it's just have mixtures like the famous cocktail party problem, in which you hear just the mixtures of human voices, and then you try to infer what are the original source voices, which is by the way extremely hard problem. But for instance, in some biomedical signals, this ICA model fits rather nicely, and one can get nice results.
By the way, the more you listen to rock music as a teenager, the harder that problem gets.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So I know that you've been touching some on parts of the answer to my next question, but what contribution gives you the greatest satisfaction?
Well, I really think it's this ICA, because it's a combination, turned out to be a combination of many things that I have been kind of thinking about in this case, for almost 30 years. Some ideas of how some simple neuron-like thing that of course can be a purely computational element or just a piece of software, how it could learn to do something very useful with as simple learning rules as possible. And it turned out that actually just extending some neural learning rules that I have been working on for a really long time, it suddenly came out that okay, if we make one extra assumption, which is that the input to this neuron actually is a mixture. Every input is a mixture of certain underlying sources that are independent. Then what we get is a kind of filter that filters out these independent things. And that was I was able to prove that in late 90s, and I was so happy.
Oh, good.
So of course we did not invent this technique of ICA independent component analysis. Has been invented before by people like Coman and Chutin in France. But we came up with a bit more, I would say, a bit more powerful and simple algorithms how to really solve the problem. So the so-called fast ICA algorithm.
Wow. And you have some other papers here that we didn't talk about yet, right?
Maybe not. I think
okay.
Yeah, more or less covered. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. Well, I think that you're right. Whenever the speed and power of an algorithm both work in your favor, then it really is an important step forward. And we all build on ideas that came before, but when you can add something that improves the performance, that's what engineering is all about. So.
Right, and also theoretically we could prove that this algorithm has, in some cases, cubic convergence, which is extremely fast. And I don't know many algorithms in practice in engineering, because many of them are linear, as you know, gradient descent and so on. The Newton algorithm, quadratic conversion, but here we can have even cubic.
Wow.
So the error decreases to the third power of the previous error, meaning that in 2-3 steps, in some cases, you can get the solution out.
Wow.
And that was a kind of surprise for me, but very nice, very beautiful surprise, of course.
Wow, that's fascinating. This question just occurred to me. Does that have any connection to some of the work that So tomorrow I'm going to be at this defense of your
Right.
most recent student of Mark's defense, and do these ideas about very fast convergence connect with any of these aspects, or maybe the random projection aspects, or
Actually, no.
no? Okay,
Yeah, no.
okay, not yet anyway.
Not yet.
Maybe somebody will invent.
Yeah, not yet. It
something.
would be a nice.
Yeah.
In Mark's thesis, he's talking about supervised learning, so
Right, yeah,
mathematics,
so,
and
yeah,
this
very
is
different.
this is definitely unsupervised.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the key point.
Okay. Good. Good. Um, well, so now we're going to transition to some questions about your involvement with the professional society. So now it's called the Computational Intelligence Society. Its precursor was the Neural Network Society, and before that we had the IEEE Neural Network Council.
Yes.
And then its major collaborating society, particularly in neural networks, is the International Neural Network Society,
Right.
and these work very well together. So what do you think is the impact that these societies made on you as your career developed?
Okay. Well, research is research, of course, and it's a kind of separate thing. But then it's very nice to belong to a group of people who understand what you're talking about, and maybe give you some positive feedback if you're successful, or negative feedback that please try harder if you're not successful. So in that sense, this community of people, many friends like Dan, you are one of them, of course.
Yeah.
Many friends like you that have been extremely important, of course, in my life. You know, Finland is a remote and small country. We don't have many people here, so especially for us, it's extremely important to go to the world and move around and build a kind of international connection network. And in that sense, these societies have been extremely important for me. So I already in this neural network research, neural network council, was it called?
Yeah, it started out as the Neural Network Council.
Right. I remember I was, and there was a neural network technical committee in that, and I was member of that already quite early.
Yeah, and you were also a board member of the International Neural Network Society as well.
That's right.
So in fact, that's these are kind of bleeding over into the next question, which was about the impact that you've been able to have on these communities. So you've been on the technical committee of one society and the board of another society,
Right.
and I'm sure you've reviewed for both societies, and then of course your involvement in the funding agency now is a major impact on the community. So, so part of what you've talked about, the impact on you, is also relevant to the impact on engineering and science in general. But are there other ways that you think that these societies have made impact on engineering and science beyond its role on an individual investigator, but on the field?
Sure. Of course, I mean the field in which we are, well, it's called computational intelligence. It's not so important what it's called, but everybody knows that there's a kind of field of science in which we are all involved, and it's absolutely important. It's a very important field, and it's quite essential that there are these powerful societies, both the IEEE side, which is very strong, but also kind of a bit on the free society side, like International Neural Network Society. Actually, I was the president of the European Neural Network Society for a long time, about 10 years ago, and this kind of bottom-up societies are really so important in bringing people together and changing ideas. And I firmly believe that this field where we are is growing in importance in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, and the reason is that we are basically talking about data-driven science. We're talking about not how computers what is the operational principle of computers, but how can computers be useful when they are digging out data and filtering something useful out of the data. So and that is a problem that certainly is not going to go away, but it's growing all the time.
Yeah, and in fact, it's growing tremendously fast. So we're bleeding over into the next question about the future of computational intelligence, the evolution of the technology, any expected confluence and any potential new entry. And almost surely the data that you're talking about is going to be something that forces these changes to happen, because we're now producing more data in one day than all of humanity produced from the dawn of civilization to the year your book came out in 2001. So
exactly, yeah.
So if you look at at least 4,000 years of history, and now more bits of data are produced in one day, that there's got to be techniques for dealing with that. That forces the field to develop.
Exactly, and I think we are in the focus, we're in the center of this field, and of course now we have this kind of evolutionary computation. We have fuzzy logic, we have neural networks, and so on. I've never been very keen on this kind of classifications. I mean, it's all just computational intelligence, whatever you call it.
Right, you use what works.
Right, yeah, right. Bayesian analysis, whatever. But it's extremely important that we have this kind of collection of methodologies that can be used for these big data problems. And I feel that our field is really at the bleeding edge of this. Is that the right word? Kind of.
Sure.
Yeah, bleeding edge of this effort to really cope with the data, because we have to cope with it.
Yeah, the field is becoming mandatory. People that want to make progress in other fields will need to use the techniques from computational intelligence.
Right. So we use a lot of machine learning on this campus, and the courses on machine learning have been growing now. So the young people have heard somewhere, I don't know where, they have heard somewhere that this is important, and my classes have been growing tremendously, the number of students. Last autumn I gave a class of 300 students on machine learning. Wow. And the students came from economics, even art and design, whatever, because they wanted to know, what is this machine learning?
Yeah.
What is this guy doing?
Do you predict a new entry into the approaches that we've been talking about? A potential new technology or a combination of technologies? And related question, do you predict a scientific or technological breakthrough as a result?
Right. I'm a little bit worried that our field does not yet pay enough attention to this data volumes. Because as you know, basically the techniques that we're using now were developed about 10 or 20 years ago, neural networks and things like that, which certainly work very well for large data. But if you have immensely large data, for instance, if you must be able just to go once through the data set, never twice, then many of the algorithms actually don't work. And I would hope that especially the young researchers would pay more attention to these, let's say, just linearly or even sublinearly learning systems that would really handle enormous amounts of data. Maybe in the streaming mode, like online learning mode. And the other thing is that cloud computing is certainly the technique of the future. There will be cloud computing, Internet of Things, all these problems, and we should be carefully looking at how our methodology, how our algorithms really parallelize over this kind of computing platforms.
Yeah, so there's basically two things that you touched on in that statement. There's embedded computing, so what kind of innovation will be happening at the point of data capture?
Right.
And then cloud computing, what kind of computing will happen at the point of data aggregation?
Right.
And these are maybe the two places where there's a potential new entry, a potential impact, a potential confluence of our technologies, and that it's going to be really important that that learning be online and that it be very fast.
Yes, yes.
And yeah,
Just try to try to maybe even kind of active learning. So just looking at the input and taking that part of the input that is useful and just discarding the rest.
yeah, it's really critical. I'm giving a talk here later this afternoon, and you're giving me ideas of stuff to stick in my talk. So that's great. Well, so well, that's the prepared questions that I have. Do you have any other final comments, final remarks, advice, other things that you were planning to talk about that we didn't touch on? Anything?
Well, nothing really. I don't know who is ever watching this this video, but if some young students are watching it, then all I can say that that this has been an extremely exciting field for the last let's say 20, 30, even 40 years. And I think it still is, because this is not like a fashion that okay, machine learning is out now let's go to three-dimensional printing or whatever, because the problems that we're talking about here in these technologies is a bad problem, and it's going to stay with us.
Yeah.
It has to be solved. And this kind of exponential growth that we really have in this data capture today, data storage today, is not very often seen in the history of science. That something just goes like this, and usually when something goes like this, something breaks. I don't know what I don't know what that is, but the future will be very, very exciting, and the young people are the ones who have to solve these problems.
Right. When something breaks, then you bring in scientists and engineers to fix it.
To fix it,
So,
and something totally new may come out of that.
yeah, I think you're right. In fact, I would not be at all surprised if people may be watching these videos more than a century from now and be encountering similarly exciting problems and similarly exciting challenges, and the field may be just as vibrant then as it is now.
Exactly, that's what I believe.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it will be. Well, kiitos Pojo. Did I say that right? Kiitos.
Kiitos paljon.
Paljon. Kiitos paljon, which is Finnish for thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan.